Welcome back to Addiction, Recovery, and Mental Health, a podcast by Waismann Method Opioid Treatment Specialists. I'm your co-host, Dwight Hurst, with David Livingston and Clare Waismann. We're here to answer your questions about addiction, treatment, and opioid dependence. Well, welcome back, everyone. This is an exciting topic to cover today. It was exciting even just prepping to talk about it just now before I hit record. So I know it's going to be a good one. Today's question is, if I am a person who is caught up in addiction or dependence or any type of substance abuse problem, how can I effectively and productively ask for help from those around me? What should I ask for? What should I, what kinds of things do I do to express my needs? How do I feel about it? All that, there's a lot wrapped up into this. We've done an episode or two about if you are a caretaker or support person or in a support system of someone with these problems. Now we're taking it from the other direction. If you have the problem, how would you approach your support system or others or treatment or any of that? And how do you ask for help? So I'm excited to hear your guys' reactions to this. Hello, David and Clare, by the way.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I think Dwight, the question itself is already very interesting, because, how does somebody ask for help? And I think the question, in a way, undermines people's ability to get help themselves and to recognize they need help and to enter treatment. So, I think this is a subject that we can talk about, the feeling of shame that is so unnecessary for getting help. There should be a feeling of the ability to feel better and get better and fight for your well-being. So I would think somebody would be proud of themselves. There is also the underlying feeling of somebody needs somebody else to help them get help because they are not able to, what is far from reality. I think it underlines a lot of misinformation of who a person is, what their abilities are, what relapse is, all the above. So I think it's a great topic that we can empower people to get well, period.
Shame pops up in, all over the place when it comes to addiction. And it's very interesting I think it's a great place to start with this, which is I'm unlikely to ask for help the more shame that I have, right? I already probably feel shame and don't really want to talk about it, or maybe I desperately want to talk about it, but I'm too ashamed or embarrassed.
Shame of what? Being human?
Oh, that's a good, yes, exactly.
Shame of having dependency needs. So in kind of the school of psychology that I was trained, they say there's 4 things present when you're successful in your therapy. When things are resolved, you have success at work, success in your relationships, the ability to play, and you can accept your dependency needs. Okay. And the verbiage in the last one is very precise. You can accept your dependency needs. So it's a need. Like in order to be healthy, we have to get our dependency needs met well. Just like, we have to eat. We have to take something from the outside in order to be strong and healthy and go about the rest of our life. We're built that way from the get-go. And I think we have a culture that is really confused about that fact, that we all have dependency needs. In fact, the better they're met, the stronger we are, the healthier we are, the more we want to give back, the more our lives open up. I mean, it's so big, this topic, and so critical to kind of, and like you're saying, it's confused I think culturally it's confused. People aren't sure if it's a sign of strength or weakness. And there's often a lot of wounding around it, which can create shame and confusion and vulnerability. It's a big topic.
It's interesting. I remember hearing this is a medical doctor in a conference that I was in a long time ago when I was getting started in this field, and it was a great way to shape the way I practice. Is he's giving this presentation, and a big part of it was some of the genetic markers or some of the natural resilience or vulnerability that people have towards addiction, and how research shows that we do have a scale there, right? And then he stopped and turned, and he really looks at everybody, and he says, "This is often mistaken for a moral weakness or strength, but it isn't." And that's then he used some words to describe what he thought of that. And I've always retained that and moved forward with this thought of as we've often said, you don't do that with many other medical things. There's a few that get picked on. Addiction is one of them, probably one of the top ones that people look at as a moral failing, when it is really like there's just all these factors. And could I be more vulnerable to addiction than my neighbor? Maybe. But that doesn't mean anything about me other than a medical fact that I probably should be aware of.
Now, I think we're in 2023. We have understood already, and I'm not even talking about drug addiction or alcohol addiction. I'm talking about phone addiction, sex addiction, shopping addiction. I mean, I think we have understood, the nervous system and, the changes that occurs in our brains when we repeat, something, especially if it's a substance. And, things just change physically, and it is treatable. But sometimes it just happens. And it's not something that, it has anything to do with who we are, what we are capable of, none of the above. I think morality and addiction shouldn't even be in the same sentence or in the same, it's different things altogether. And while we as healthcare professionals did not understand the effects of habits, of dependence, of addiction, or whatever behavior we repeat, while we didn't scientifically understand the cause and the effects of it, I could see those behaviors, those judgmental theories. But now, at this point, they're harmful. They are untrue. They have no basis to it. Mm-hmm. So we gotta, as a society, put this behind us and start treating people with the respect they deserve. That's it.
I think that acceptance is going to be one of the key words here as we go through this conversation. We're already talking about it. The more I can accept that I have this issue and that it doesn't make me a bad person and that I don't need to be ashamed, I'm more likely to reach out to people and to go and also to reject that message when I get it. Because one of the things
but Dwight,
yeah.
The acceptance is the issue. Accepting what? That you are human?
Yeah.
No, it's that you have dependency needs.
That you have needs. You have emotional and physical needs.
But that you have dependency needs. That in order to be, and because it's a need, so the disease model of addiction is a model because a need never goes away. The need to sleep never disappears. The need to eat never disappears. The need to be connected to other people, to ward off anxiety, depression, to not feel paranoid if you don't know where you fit in the world. These are needs that are basic. They begin from the get-go when we're born, and they exist throughout our lives. And if you've had bad experiences with these things, it's hard to figure that. It's hard to feel what that's saying, right? If you get some food poisoning, man, you stay away from that food for a while. And so that's a lot of what happens with this. And then you find something else, maybe not as good for you, right? But and so you have people who have really hard, sometimes very bad experiences with dependency. And then it moves them towards a self-reliance or reliance on a substance. And then the treatment is the regaining of that understanding through a healthy and good experience and with dependency.
And sometimes the nature of the problem can muddy the waters of our thinking. Not, there's the societal shame and pressure that we're talking about, but also there are the symptoms of mental illness, which can sometimes cut into our likelihood of acceptance. So for those that are also struggling with mental illness, or even just the dynamic of addiction, sometimes can either, impair our judgment, obviously, and also it can throw us into a state of extreme reactions, extreme thinking. It sort of can agitate some of the parts of our brain that have to do with panic and anxiety. And so in a way, some of the things that we need to do in order to ask for help productively are also in conflict with some of the frequent symptoms of addiction.
Like, what can you say more of what you mean?
Well, I find that when there is something that is, you described, there's something that we embrace as a self-medication, there's that feeling of need that's attached to that. There's the dependence, particularly with opiates and alcohol and some of those. But there's also the behavioral addiction to things, even if they don't have as strong a chemical. There's the chemicals in our brain. And when we're doing that, I find that a lot of times if one of the symptoms of addiction is a resistance to knowing that I have it, right, that's an obstacle. But I've worked with a lot of people who, while they are in that mindset, and also because of people's reactions, they can get extreme in their thinking. And I tend to look at it like, if I have extreme thinking or black and white thinking, it's all or nothing. I'm either a guilty piece of garbage or I am innocent and everybody else is out to get me. Now, that is not everybody has the extremes of those, but it's easy to bounce back and forth from those positions, and both of those will stop me from seeking help often.
But aren't those unhealthy defense mechanisms?
Oh, absolutely.
That makes you less reachable?
Agreed. Very much so. Yeah.
But again, then we go back to what we always go back to: unresolved, mental health issues, unresolved feelings towards ourselves.
Well, it's true. It's a really good point, because I think some of the obstacles to asking for help for addiction, maybe a lot of them, correlate or overlap with the same obstacles to asking for help with our mental health, even if there's no addiction involved, right? So some of the nature of the problem that I'm having makes it hard for me to ask for help about the problem. Does that make more sense as I say that?
Yeah. Right, David?
For sure. I think the people who, I was talking to someone recently, and we were talking about sort of who went to therapy and what type of people got help. And one of the things I said is, generally the people who are healthier go to therapy. Okay. And because the people who are too defended, who have had too many experiences, and this isn't a put down on them, it's usually their experience. What's happened to them has wounded them in a way that they've lost hope that they can have a good experience. And so if you lose hope, and then someone says, "Oh, you should go to therapy," but you've had bad experiences when you've relied on people, it doesn't ring true. And so it's not a put down of that person. It is just an acknowledgement that the people who become most defensive have often had the worst experiences. And so the people who've had the best experiences are usually more flexible and more willing to risk, because they've had I think everybody's had good and bad experiences, but if you've had enough good experiences, there's a hopefulness and a feeling that I can get better and I can get help because I've had it before. And so, that's in play a lot.
Yeah, I think it's also, comes from self-worth, feeling deserving of feeling well, truly feeling well, instead of just, the world thinking you're doing well.
I think that we can easily get sucked into making things look good instead of making things better or good even.
Well, that's right. A lot of times people's lives are functioning well, but they don't feel good. They feel burdened, they feel anxious or other things, and they're not, and so there's this, there's this break in the the how they're functioning as compared to how they're feeling. And so you'll see with addiction that often people are functioning well, their life's going okay, but they really don't feel very good, and there are problems that are kind of unresolved, and enough of them that they'll start to cope to try to feel better. And and it's actually easier to just kind of work on them, usually not. But however, there's a period in which it can be disruptive, right? To sort of begin to talk and deal with things can initially be disruptive. So I one of the things I say it to myself and everybody, is you have to have a little courage in this life. You have to be willing to take some chances, be smart about it, right? Trust is earned and lost. You have to see who is, you have to have a good enough feeling before you invest too much with anybody or in a treatment or in a program. But you have to have some courage too. You've got to take some chances.
I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are about this. Many times as people go through this process, they will feel alienated from those around them, right? And sometimes this has to do with choices or actions that are taken during addiction, or maybe just, family history or whatever it is. But the nature of the problem sometimes amplifies or fosters that alienation. So then people are either, the two responses I see most often, people are hesitant to ask for help because of the alienation that's there. Or on the other side, sometimes the support system, a family member, a spouse, a parent, child, even, you go to them and say, I need this. And there's a general reaction of, you need this, huh? Well, guess what I've needed over the last however many years. And that alienation, I see it as a big obstacle.
I think there's a difference between, obviously a child and an adult. A child needs to ask for help because, a child is dependent on someone to ask for help. An adult can get help, period. And I think if an adult, let's say a wife, a husband, a partner, looks at their spouse and say, hey, falling apart here, going to get help, period. I think it makes you not just stronger, but more responsible. It makes you human. It makes you just, you can't beat honesty. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. You can't beat honesty. And I think the longer you derail from honesty, the bigger that snowball is going to weigh on you.
Right. And the honesty can include, like you're kind of in the scenario I think you're talking about, Dwight, where if someone goes to their partner or spouse and says, hey, I'm struggling with, substance abuse issue and I need help. And the partner is like, okay, well, you haven't been here, or they're upset with them. You can talk that through. You can say, like you're saying, Claire, honesty, you're right. I haven't been, and I need to do better. And, and these are separate issues, but they're connected. And one of the reasons I'm going is because I need to be a better spouse to you or partner or whatever, because a lot of getting help is going to bring up competing needs, feelings of somebody being hurt or upset. And that, but that can be navigated.
And I think that can be dealt with once you feel healthier and stronger. So you can even come to, a point where you say, I understand how you feel. I get it. You might be feeling let down, frustrated, whatever it is. But I can't help you unless I am healthy. And I am taking the responsibility of getting healthy. So I'm going for treatment, whatever treatment may be. Is it therapy? Is it detox? Is it whatever that may be? I think just taking the responsibility and having, putting the courage in, even if it's a momentary courage for like 5 minutes, is Just nobody can blame you for trying to get better, to be a better person, to get healthier. So you fail. So what?
Yeah, everybody gets lost at times. Everybody.
How important do you feel like is relationship repair? And that's a broad term. It doesn't necessarily mean couples counseling, although that's one of the options that definitely falls squarely under that umbrella. But how do you see that in people you work with, the importance of repairing that relationship and building trust and such?
Are you asking me?
No, either one of you.
Yeah. Okay.
Both.
I'm going to let you go on that one because I'm a little more radical on that one, David. So you.
Awesome.
So you're asking about how you rebuild trust?
Well, sure. Yeah. The importance.
No, how
of
important it is to rebuild that trust. Yeah. You know, are you asking, Dwight, how far you should go on your efforts to rebuild a relationship that is already exhausted?
Well, that's another part of it that's really good. I guess I was approaching it from a standpoint of just, I would say that it's very frequent. I mean, it's probably one of the closest times I would come to a general blanket statement would say that most of people are in some need of trying to patch up some relationships. That's kind of where I'm going, but I like where your head's at right there too.
Well, I mean, it depends on the degree of everything, and just kind of talking, generally, you start wherever you're at. So wherever the condition of the relationship is, you start there. But and it's also important to understand that even if someone's been dealing with substance abuse and someone feels betrayed by it, there's a tendency to want to throw everything out. I've heard people say things like, I'm like, how's your marriage? Everything's really good. He's a great husband, a great wife, this and that, but I don't know if I can live with this. I don't know if I can stay this. And I'm like, wait. No. Your life is great. And they just got off of this stuff and they're coming to you. This is some chemicals that are dangerous and not good to take. That's getting resolved. And you've got a great life. You have to put things into the right size. And so if you've built a great life, that has nothing to do with the chemicals. Okay. If anything, it maybe inhibited it. The great life is still the great life. If things are going well, they're going well. If they're not going well, they're not going well. You deal with things as they are. There's a danger in kind of confusing this and overlapping things and getting things and making things not the right size for what they actually are.
Do you think fear is a big factor there?
Almost always, right? I think people feel betrayed if somebody's up to something they don't know and they think they know them and they learn something that is it creates this kind of confusion and feeling that can be very powerful. But so you have to kind of parse that and really make sense of it for what it is and bring it to the, like I said, to the right size. And often the person who's dealing with the substance abuse is actually doing it. And I see this a lot because what they don't want to do is let anybody down. It's not that they're doing it to betray them or mess with them. They're doing it because they feel so much responsibility and love and interest in taking care of people that they don't want to let them down. And in fact, it's so important to them they can't even tell anyone. And that's a, when that's the case, that's got to be understood as it is.
Yeah, there's a sensitivity that can be there. I think particularly in early periods of non-use where you stop using because you're getting rid of essentially it's still a self-medication, a coping skill, a blanket wrapped around you, so to speak, and then you toss that off and oftentimes right when you first are going into the initial throes of treatment, I think that's often the time where you have a bunch of other stuff to clean up at the same time. You're talking about, the relationship stuff. Some people have legal complications or health complications. We've done, some episodes talking about that too. And all of that is like, hey, I got this big project of trying to be sober and do treatment, and there's several other things that require my attention possibly at the same time when I'm feeling totally overwhelmed. And I think expression of that and trying to find people who will, however they are feeling, will try to understand that and have empathy. That can be huge.
Yeah, the importance of being honest, not just about your relationship with somebody else, but about your needs, where you are. I think timing when you're trying to get well is so important for everybody involved. As David was saying, I think sometimes when spouses say, it's too much, I don't know if I can handle it, it's just the timing of everything. People become overwhelmed and they lose the perspective of who they are, what their life has been. Stepping backwards a little and start the healing process, slower, without so many expectations, so fast. There are no miracles.
Well, and one of the things, particularly in partnership, romantic relationships, one of the things that really eats away at it is making decisions based off of old data, meaning we don't go back and test to see what's changed. And this is going to undermine when I said most people in relationship repair. We still have to repair it, but you might not know how strong your spouse or partner is until you give them a chance, right? Try to get some new data, come and say, hey, I'm trying to get, treatment and sober and I need your help. Give them the chance to say something that you don't like before you react to what you think they're going to say that you don't like. Because they may surprise you. They may say, awesome, I'm in, or some version of that.
Well, people evolve.
Mm-hmm. I often think about something that you said on this program a long time ago, David. It was during we were recording during a lot of the COVID stuff, and you expressed the feelings that you have or that people have of anxiety. And I've repeated this phrase over and over again to clients of mine and to people, which is you're as sick as you feel, not as sick as you fear. Right. And so kind of that goes along with this thing of ask for help. Let people, either surprise you or not surprise you, but you got to give them the chance and say, I'm only as rejected as I actually am. I'm not as rejected as I'm afraid I will be.
Right. That's the courage,
Yeah.
And if you've had some bad experiences, it takes even a little more courage.
How do you build up that courage, would you say? What are some ways to do that?
When people are struggling with doing something, I say this to them. I say, here's how you do it. Okay. And this works every time. You just speak the words. That's it. You decide what you want to say, and then you speak the words. Okay. I know how obvious and basic that is, but you just have to make a decision to speak. People don't speak.
Yeah.
Okay. And remember, a thought is not the same as a thought spoken. Once a thought's spoken, things change. Mm-hmm. So you speak.
It's sometimes harder to start a conversation than it is when you're in the midst of it, I find. It's like, if you jump off a diving board, once you jump off, you're going to hit the water. You're not going to get lost on the way down to the water or forget how to fall. And when you hit the water, you're not going to drown. You're not going to forget how to swim. Let me put it that way. And I think it's the same when you start a conversation or you throw it out there. Once you've done it, you're going to hit the water and you're going to have to swim. And no matter how good or bad the conversation goes, you'll get through it and you'll get out of the pool eventually. I realize I made the diving board sound like something to survive, and I guess some people think it's fun. So there you go. I guess I'm revealing my poor swimming skills.
Well, but that's it. I mean, so part of what therapy is, so you sit down and you start to speak, and you speak out loud that which is inside of you, that which makes you anxious, or that which. But the therapy is happening significantly because you're speaking, because the thoughts are change as soon as you put them into words, and there's a shift in the and what everything means as soon as it's being spoken, especially depending on who's hearing it. And so that is the vulnerability, and but one of the things that's very therapeutic about longer term therapy is you learn to speak. You learn to take that chance. You learn to put things into words. You learn to take those risks, and it becomes sort of embedded as a way of living.
And I think also, David, the fear of confronting or dealing with the issue often makes things so much bigger than they are, and makes the expectations of things going wrong so much more tragic than it really is.
Well, that's it. That you're afraid someone's going to be mad at you. Well, people are mad at me every day, and I've gotten used to it. Now, it's not that I want people to be mad at me, and hopefully that's a bit of an overstatement, but it isn't that you're not negotiating something or figuring things out, or you're going to get everything quite right. You're not. But if you're willing to hang in there, and you're willing to sort of step forward and step back and so forth, it's unbelievable how far you can go.
What about for those who have found that resistance? Maybe someone who's in a toxic system that is not supportive. That comes up, not for everyone, but for those who don't have the benefit of a supportive friend or family system around them, or maybe even have a detrimental support system with toxicity. What should they do? Where should they turn? Or any thoughts or ideas about ways to work with that?
Claire, you're going to have to answer this one.
It's an unfortunate situation that we see more often than not. And unfortunately, this is a person that is going to have to find their inner strength and their, want and will to get better. And yes, there is help out there. There are groups out there, so they can at least be part of some support. But it's unfortunate. Some people live, with very unfortunate realities, and they become loners. And I think that's where we see a lot of the mental health issues of anger growing in this society. People just grow apart.
Well, that's well said. And I mean, the reason I let you start is because it's a hard thing, and you're 100% right. And it really helps to have, I would say in a situation like that, finding somebody you can talk to who, really has your well-being at heart is critical. And whether it's a professional or a friend or somebody who you can, to buffer whatever else is not working, and where you're not getting support. And then you have to, come to terms with what your life is and isn't. And that's no small thing, but I think it really helps to have some support in some way and somewhere to turn during that, if you're going to be sort of shifting and looking at those things. And it's a big part of our world. I mean, there's a lot of divorces. There's a lot of relationships that go bad for one reason or another. And there's a lot of difficulties that people go through, and a lot of losses, and on. And it really, really helps to find, and I think a lot of what, because we started this talking about dependency needs. So a lot of a treatment is helping people build more and more good dependency, meaning people they can lean on, and people who also can lean on them. And so there's this sense of a community and of good dependency.
Maybe instead of saying dependence needs, we'll talk about emotional needs, health needs, just needs.
Yeah.
And it's okay to need. We're human beings. We need each other. We need support. We can't believe that we can live alone and deal with the world alone. It doesn't work. It's not part of being a human being.
I had a colleague who would always, he'd talk a lot about a very close friend he had who he would use heroin with back in his days before he became a counselor, not during, but before he became a counselor. And when he stopped using illicit drugs and he stopped drinking and he got involved in healthy things and ultimately dedicated the rest of his life, he's passed on now, unfortunately, but he dedicated himself to helping people through it. But he always talked about one friend they would use together. They were super close, not just because they did drugs together, but they had a real attachment. But every time they spent time together, he'd relapse pretty much. And so he had to not spend time the same way with that person. And that was very hard. And I think we have to look at and acknowledge that it does impact our relationships. We tend to assume that once we stop doing an unhealthy thing, everything that happens next is going to be good things. But some of them are rough, and there is trade-offs and sacrifices to be made. You know, I'm not one who believes everybody has to cut everyone out of their lives or anything like that, but you do have to be judicious where and with whom you're spending your time, especially if you're just starting out to do something like that generally.
Right.
You know, as we grew up, my mom used to say, you can't be the Red Cross all the time. And I never understood that until I grew up. Sometimes you want to help and you want to be there for everybody, but sometimes it is just not healthy for you. And you can't, help unless you can at least keep yourself in a safe setting. So some relationships are just not healthy. And, some people can relate better with some, and some people can relate better with others. And I think going back to the question of fighting for a relationship is you got to put things in perspective. And obviously, you got to think about these things when you're not emotionally unstable or feeling weak or in crisis. But eventually, you got to think, can I be there for them? Should they be there for me? Should I reach out to this person or to that person? Should I keep trying to have this relationship in my life? I mean, all these things are part of the choices you make every day when you wake up. And those choices will dictate, how your day is going to turn out.
Yeah, and I think that an important part of this is that as you are going through stuff, there's a tendency to fall into a trap, kind of a thought trap of saying, if I have, and you see these people have some of these bad or undesirable experiences we're talking about. So once again, some people dealing with health damage from addiction. We had a really wonderful conversation about that a few weeks ago, or a relationship impairment, or trying to rebuild a bridge with their kids, or even a divorce or something like that. I always like to point out that you haven't, the thought trap is to think I'm failing at becoming more healthy because these things are happening. And it's like, well, if you're still, you gotta look at these things and say, if you're dealing with the bad things that are happening and you're not slipping into self-medication and you're still, treating yourself kindly and you're doing everything you can to be sober and healthy, you're still sober and healthy while you're going through some really, really crummy things, right? Life isn't about not having crummy things happen or bad things or painful, scary things. It's about thriving, surviving through those things as much as we can, right?
I guess you don't lose if you learn.
Not sure I entirely agree with that, but I hear you.
Ooh, what you got? We always agree so much. Let's bring some let's bring some spice to this, David. What do you think?
Well, I mean,
I guess we'll be different. You're not a loser if you learn.
No.
You gain something out of it.
Yeah.
No, and I don't think there's any word I despise more than the idea of anybody, the word loser. We're all winners and losers in a million ways. And like you're saying, and learning how to handle things better is kind of what we're all in the same boat trying to do. And it's critical, like you're saying, like if you're learning and you're trying and you're working towards things, that just that's so honorable. And it's just, there's something really decent and honorable, and I think what's really fantastic about any therapeutic community is people who have learned that and sort of admire the effort and the interest and making things better for each other and ourselves. So, that's really what a therapeutic community is, if you just sum it up. And some people do it better than others, but it's, there's something very honorable in just trying to do better, trying to make things better.
And it's overly simplistic. You're absolutely right to identify oneself as a winner or loser. It's because, as you put it, there's elements of both of those things so much in our lives. It's a good point. Thank you so much for being here and listening. We're going to call it there for today. Lots of important tips, lots of wisdom that I was glad to be a part of in this conversation. If you'd like to get involved in our conversation, please email us, info@opiates.com, or go to opiates.com. You can go @opiates on Twitter or any social media, and tell us questions that you'd like us to address on the show. We're excited to hear from you. This podcast is a production of Waismann Method Opioid Treatment Specialists and is produced by Pop Collar Productions. Our music is the song Medical by Clean Mind Sounds. Please consider leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice. It helps people to find the show. Or go out and tell a friend about the show today. For Clare Waismann and David Livingston, I've been Dwight Hurst, and glad again to have you with us. We'll be back in your ears soon. Until then, keep asking questions. If you ask questions, you can find answers, and if you find answers, you can find hope. Thanks again for being here. Bye-bye.